This podcast is presented by the Commercial Space Project Group of the Space Generation Advisory Council. The SGAC, in support of the United Nations Programme on Space Applications, is a non-governmental organization and a professional network. Its goal is to convey the perspectives of students and young space professionals to the United Nations, space agencies, and academia. Hello and welcome to the Commercial Space Project Group podcast. I'm your host, Tsovinar, Avagyan, and today we are honored to have Mr. Rasmus Munk with us. Mr. Munk is the founder of Alchemist in Copenhagen, which is a two-Michelin-star restaurant, and was named Best Chef in the World by the Best Chef Awards in 2025. He also leads Spora, which is a multidisciplinary food innovation lab where he experiments with sustainable and technological approaches to gastronomy. In this episode, we will explore Mr. Munk's journey as a visionary innovator. We will discuss how he combines gastronomy, technology, and science, including his collaborations and recent ventures in the space field. Mr. Munk, welcome to the podcast. We'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
No, thank you so much. But as you mentioned, I'm Rasmus Munk, and in my daytime, I'm operating Alchemist in Copenhagen, and having a lot of side projects beyond the restaurant, but everything is kind of merged together because it's the same philosophy and want to do a great thing in our society. Is driven very much by impact. So from homeless projects to kids hospitals to space exploration, it all have the same kind of narrative or outcome as the end goal, which is changing the world through food.
That is such an awesome mission. We will talk about your work in more detail across all of those dimensions a bit later, but first I wanted to ask you about your broad spectrum of work. You have interests across many different fields, a true Renaissance person. Have you had this curiosity since childhood, or did it develop over time through your experiences and the knowledge you gained?
Yeah, it's been something that's developed over time. I think from I was a kid, I've always been very curious in mind and always have been a big day thinker, a daydreamer. I've always I've seen a lot of movies, Disney movies, and from this very humble place in Denmark, where like it's more the farmer side of Denmark, and to grow up there and you don't see any other culture than your own, and you never see anybody else with another skin color, or like it's a very little, very conservative farmer place. So in that way, everything has been in my mind up to my imagination, and I think that's been very much since my childhood that I imagined a lot of things. And could I one day meet a movie star? And like, how is it in movies? And like in that way, I think the imagination at least has been played a vital role in my childhood. From coming from a place where maybe there's not been that much, also financially with some parents that's not been working, and with 4 siblings. So in that way, I've never, never had the clear mind I needed to be a chef, or I wanted to do this with my craft. But that had built up over time. But always the imagination of what I will do with my life and has been and I think that's today as well is something that drives me, that I like to imagine things, and I like to state it out there and get it, try to fulfill it in the reality as well, and dare to dream big as well, and I think that's been important with some of the projects that we have done. And over time, I realized that craft as a chef and gastronomy as a language can be used in multiple ways. So it's possible to actually use this both within maybe scientific research and have this gastronomical due diligence aspect in the projects. But also when you talk about space food example, because mainly when that's research, is focusing about nutritious, and it's not about evoking experiences or memories, or like how do we also think about dining and all of the value there is with sitting around the table and dining together. I saw one of the projects we did with MIT Media Lab, where we we saw some of these spaceships, like where there was not thought about having a table where you could at least be around, and things like that is small things, but I think it's so important, and it's also when we have interviewed some of the astronauts that we have been working with, the belonging of that thing and experiences of like this sakura blossom or lobster roll with buttery bread, like these things is memories that really have a big I would say is nearly everything of the value we have on this earth, and I think we need to remember those mistakes and things. So over time, learned a lot about how I can use my field involved in all different kind of stuff that not necessarily need to be in the craftsmanship of a chef.
Yes. So it all started from imagination. You know, sometimes people's ideas are so ambitious and unique that others cannot always perceive or appreciate them as they deserve. This can become a challenge when seeking investment, for example, or attracting, let's say, the right audience. Can you please share some experiences from your journey? How do you present your visions? How did you secure an investment for Alchemist? And in general, how do you ensure that projects maintain their vision and soul while engaging investors?
Mm. Yeah, I think you're completely right, and I think also I've been lucky and privileged to maybe meet the right people on the right time and space because um, I mean, of course, it's probably been a. I don't know if it was a good idea on paper, but at least for me, when looking back, it was maybe a crazy idea on paper that we wanted to do a restaurant where you needed an investment of 10, 15 million euros to make it a reality, but also a restaurant where you were not wanted to please all of the diners. You wanted to talk about things that happen in society. You want to put in front of them subjects like hunger or child labor in the chocolate industry, and all of this hard challenge question that you never will ask in a restaurant because restaurants is about pleasure. And I think to have some days on board of that, I think is amazing. And so I think I'm privileged and lucky in many ways as well. But when I approach things like that and raise money for also Spora or space projects and stuff like that, it's very much I would say driven by uh, the ideas that is presented. I would say hopefully in the right way and is presented with a lot of passion and 100% dedication to what I want to do, and never compromise on that. So of course you maybe need to compromise sometimes when you fund money for something along the way and say, okay, this is the compromise I can live with, and then we also secure all of the other things. So of course, but I think for the first time that you meet somebody and want to outline your dream or your vision, then it needs to be on your, as you say, core values. It needs to be on it needs to be there needs to be avocado for that side of the table. And I also believe then you will burn more with the energy in you, and you present it in a way that hopefully is magical for the one sitting across the table and maybe need to invest in it. And I think that's why we were lucky enough to secure the investment, both because it was the right partner that sat on the other side of the table, but also because the project I really believe is sincere that this would be a success, and I also believe that it would be something new to the world of astronomy and new ways of looking at it, and luckily he had the same same view on it and wanted to invest in it. But I understand that it's also a privileged situation that we are, that there's not many getting those kind of opportunities. So that's also why I say there's a piece of luck in it as well. But of course, also hard work, and had before I got this investment, I also had what can you say, proven that we could make food, and I had a business before that and stuff like that. So in that way, it was also not just a thing on paper without any things to show beforehand. But it was anyway. It was still relatively unfamous. There was not any Michelin stars. We were not on any list in that way. But at least we had something you could see in real life, and it was not just the words, which I also think is important when you want to do something. Then maybe use the time and space, and maybe a little bit of money of your own to actually prototype it, or to because a lot of people maybe don't have the same imagination as you have, and to tap into. I remember it clearly with Alchemist when we even that we needed to use 10-15 million euros to build a restaurant. We also needed to do a lot of partnerships to example furniture and stuff like that, get some good prices and deals. And I remember when I walked out here, when it was completely empty room, I was just pointing and saying, okay, here will the wine cellar be. This will be 3 towers with glass, and nobody signed any deals. So it was first when we invited them back, when the restaurant had all of the skeleton up, and they could see and imagine what can you say, the size of it, and how big it actually wanted to be. But I learned very fast that it's not every person that have this kind of visualization in the head about how it will look. So if you in that way can de-risk that and have beautiful renderings of the space that you want to protect, or prototyping or whatever, like, then I think it's easier for some people to actually tap into your idea.
I can only imagine the amount of work that went into that process. It's truly fantastic. Let's also talk about the concept a bit more. When people think about food, many focus on taste first, fewer on texture, and even fewer on its impact on the body or its potential for artistic expression or activism. Besides your restaurant, you also created Spora, where you experiment with food, cutlery, and presentation, and collaborate with scientists and engineers, including NASA engineers. In one interview, you mentioned a dish called space bread that is now used in children's oncology hospitals in Copenhagen. Could you share more details about this and other examples of how you use technology and innovation both inside and outside of the restaurant? And specifically, how do you collaborate with scientists and engineers, especially those from the space industry?
Yeah, so Alchemist is a place where we want to transform the world to a better place. That's the ambition of it. And one thing is to highlight it through the diners and storytelling, and that way hopefully inspire people, and food media as a podcast as we're doing right now, that you can talk about your vision. But I also think it's important to do actively changing in the society, and it's all from like social justice and responsibility to fill in there, which we're focusing a lot on, but also to the research for the greater good. I would say, like, the things that's going to be published, and I think one example I can take it out with we did was together with Berkeley University, where we had a scientist called Vayu that was here and doing a part of his PhD about how to use Neurospora intermedia, which is the fungi strain from Indonesia, on Chum. And this fungi has been used for millennium, like for a long time. But it's very rare that we have done it in other substrates. And we did it in all kinds of substrates. And we figured out when you inoculate it in a high protein and with starch, then you can create these nearly sweetness flavors, so the pineapples, banana, exotic fruit flavors. So we created a sweetness without using any sugars, and with a natural fermentation of 2 days. And that was such a big research that it was published in Nature Microbiology. So that's the example of, like, it ended up being a dessert on the restaurant. It ended up being, as I said, published in different scientific journals and lately in Nature Microbiology. So in that way, if a restaurant with our perspective and creativity can say, normally this is the outcome, but let's try to do it in a variety of ways, and we end up maybe actually succeeding with finding another way maybe to create sweetness. That's I think is amazing, and something that we want to contribute with. And that kind of creativity and what can you say, pace of developing as well, because as in restaurants, it's not that we don't take that many meetings about, like, what does the board say and how do we do this, and like what is the we just do it and we try it out in various ways, and then we of course especially within science project, then we start when we know that, okay, this is quite good. What did we do and how did we do it? And all these sort of things, of course, and then funnel it down at some point. Um, but I think that the chefs have that kind of unique approach to some of these things, where when you are more on the scientific side, it's another way to operate, and you need both things to make it a success in the end of the day. We have done projects with MIT on space exploration, where like building how should a moon restaurant look like without doing the same mistakes that they've done on planet Earth. So what kind of cuisine, creating a manifest for space cuisine, prototyping of dishes there. And one of the things that we did was the space bread that was not crumbling. So that was the importance. But we ended up being that we researched in different techniques and ways to go, where we figured out you could aerate in a special way. And then this example is soy sauce from Kyoto in Japan, which we aerate up with over 10,000% of air, and we create this complete crispy structure, but it disappears and dissolves straight away. And we take now that technology and use it in the kids hospital that we're partnering with here in Copenhagen. So they are examples of kids with cancer. When they get chemotherapy, they can have these open wounds in the throat, and don't want to have the side effect of eating something crispy. But in this way here, they can get the satisfaction and the stimulation of the crispy crunchy texture, but without having the effect of something that's crunchy in your throat. So I think it's, for me, that's the amazing part, especially with space exploration, is that it's very much out there, many of the things, and sitting in and say, okay, we're making a space manifesto for the moon, and we want to publish things like that. But when are we actually opening the restaurant on the moon? That's my question to the scientists, and that's a little bit ahead of time and maybe impatient there. But then if we can use some of the research and outcome on planet Earth and do a difference, I think that's amazing. And I think that what you've seen in space research the last 60 years is that many of these explorations has been things that we're also taking a little bit for granted here on Earth, that actually has been a game changer in a way of like signals, GPS, Velcros, all of these things that's getting from space exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. Your collaboration with MIT is such a great example of something that can inherently be designed for space use, but eventually become useful in a number of other seemingly unrelated fields as well. Another core idea present in your work is the continuous process of raising awareness about different issues. As the world evolves and we face new challenges every day, do you have any space related topics or issues in mind that you could be exploring in this format, either now or in the future?
Yeah, we do it actually right now. We have a lot of focus on space junk right now, which is for me crazy that we have I think it was 1.5 million estimated objects on the size of an iPhone flying around in our orbit, and that we already polluted a space that we're not even been in, like at least not many of us. It's quite crazy, and I think it says a lot about the human race, that the consequences of the things that we're doing, we're not always in. We don't maybe think that holistic about those things. And we don't have this relationship to Mother Earth. And I know there's a lot of companies now working on that, because it will be a completely huge challenge in the future if it will block for signals. It will challenge a lot of things if we don't go to clean up the mess that we're doing. I know there's some space agency working on like big kind of magnetic fields is taking up in a satellite and getting some of these things to attach and then take it down and clean up the mess that we have made. And I understand you maybe don't have the holistic view on it in the 60s or 70s, like things like that. But at least nowadays we still allow that we send up a massive amount of satellites, and if it collided these small particles, it become eventually a big field of space junk, and I think that's a story that we right now have on the planetarium dome that we have as the main dining room, where we have the beautiful Earth, and we have all of these particles flying around and full of light, so you can see them going into each other and separate in smaller parts. I remember first time I got the images from NASA with all of these small particles all in dust, and I said to my 3D team, I said, this must be a mistake, a rendering mistake from them. Can you get them to send some new pictures? And we approached them and they said, no, this is space junk. And I think that it's also a thing that you don't hear about in the news and the media, because it's something that's so long away. So, and I understand that there's other situations in the world that you need to take care of. But that's one of the subjects that we're talking about right now. And then we're also talking about the good side of space exploration, like with the space bread that we're serving, that it also have all of this exploration. So I'm not saying that I'm against getting satellites off or like going to space. I just think we also need to be holistic about how do we clean up after this thing.
Space always seems like a distant and vague concept to people, to the point where we tend to forget that we, here on Earth, are actually already part of space and the universe. One of your latest projects is a collaboration with Space VIP. It's a dining experience in space using a capsule created by Space Perspective, which is the world's first carbon-neutral spaceflight experience company. The proceeds also supported the Space Prize, which promotes gender equality in science and technology. Could you share more about this project? Was it a one-time event or is it ongoing? What inspired it and how is the collaboration going so far?
But the collaboration goes as collaborations. Found out a while ago that when you do things within space, things take a long time, and it's also complicated. And there's a lot of things that, especially when you want to take normal people up in like a tourism kind of space exploration, then it's even more complicated. We still work with Space VIP. We working with them on getting to be the first one to make this stratospheric dining experience. And I think Safalto in France right now is the ones that's closest to be the company that's going up with a carbon neutral flight. I was approached by them and suggested them that we take out some seats to make a kitchen in there and then we make a dinner. And I think Roman is from Space VIP is as crazy man as ourselves. So he was a little bit about the price of taking out seats. It cannot be too many seats, but he did it and make it happen that we can actually we can do this the spaces. So when he approached me about if I wanted to do some collaboration with them and about doing a dinner in the stratosphere, I thought it was a joke to start with and a spam mail, and we replied because it didn't seem like a spam mail, so we replied in a nice way, but if they were serious, let's take a meeting about, and then they reached back straight away. So I think that's they are brilliant companies, Space VIP, and have this very. They really want to get to that place where we all can belong as well and be a part of it and see the Earth from the top. And many of these astronauts that we have interviewed and is coming down to Earth again is saying this, like the overview effect is something that they take with them, that see the planet as a whole and without borders and as a thing we need to protect. Maybe we need to have some of today's world leaders up there just so they can get a little bit better balance in the politics they're doing. I don't know, but if we could give this kind of approach to or mindset to people, I think it's very interesting. And also with Space VIP's ambition of that this is right now cost a fortune to go for the first stratospheric dining experience and be the first one to do it. But along the way, in near-come future, it will be as going to Barcelona for a little holiday. You could maybe take up a capsule and then see things from 100,000 feet above sea level, and that thing was really exciting for me, and especially that it was a carbon neutral flight as well, and they were willing to, of course, to discover and research within space exploration, but also make dishes and dishes and concepts that was around space exploration, and some of the also negative stories like about space jumps or like challenging stories, and I think that was interesting. So it's not just Alchemist coming and doing 10 signature dishes and then we were out of there. So I think it's a really exciting collaboration. Sometimes I hope that things will go faster, but it is a little bit more complicated projects than doing a function somewhere in the world. So.
It's a very, very ambitious project, and I can totally envision the potential challenges. But it's incredibly exciting and promising. And on that note, what is the next goal? A Mars Habitat restaurant, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the next goal. Right now, we're doing like a lot of projects, and I would like to be. If there's anyone out there that have a connection to do the first restaurant on the moon, or thinking about how do we get this moon manifesto that we made, for example, with MIT, how do we get this as a reality? How do we look at it? How do we cook? How do we make the technology around it to make it happen? Things like that I would love to explore. Mostly because it's a research, it's the nerdy part of our business, and where I feel like we can also contribute, and hopefully there will be some outcomes there that can be also a big thing on the planet Earth that we currently living on. So I would love to do things like that. There's very much out there. One of the projects that's maybe more realistic right now for the next couple of years at least is a project that we're doing with Novo Nordisk Foundation and Gates Foundation in the States about turning CO2 into to food. So taking CO2 and harvest CO2 from different factories, and then make it as a feed for acetate, which is known as acidity in vinegar, and then ferment that with microbes. So you create an outcome that would be protein. But with a fermentation without using sugars or agricultural land. So you don't need any agricultural land to sustain this fermentation, which will be a quite groundbreaking way of fermenting if we can do this in scale. And I think there was some calculation not long ago about if we took the CO2 just from concrete factories in India and only from that industry and only from India, then you could reduce the agricultural land with the size of Argentina. And I think the 4 years ambition right now is that then we will sustain around 1 billion people with protein. So if things like that will become reality within the next 4 years, I think that will be amazing, and something I would be very proud of. And then hopefully a couple of years later, the moon or the Mars will be everything.
Sounds so amazing. And how do you think food design for astronauts on space missions will develop in the future? Are you already collaborating with space agencies, or do you plan to? Yeah, we have a couple of projects that hopefully soon going through. So it's still under NDA, so I can't say which companies, but it's very big thing within space. And I think where we can bring our say uniqueness or like our creativity and our way of thinking about food is the experience elements of it. Like what do you experience when you eat, and what kind, like nutrition wise, they have researchers that's like way ahead of what we do, like because they focusing on that. That's what that is important for them. Packaging, compromising the things, so it's the weight and all of these things is important. But we also need to remember that if you need to be out there for a while, you need to be stimulated, mindfulness as well. So food is about experiences. It's about feeling pleasure. It's about memories, and how can we help creating those things? How can we create the best mouth feelings and textures, temperatures? How do we do that in an interesting way? And I think that's where we really have a role to play in food for astronauts in the future. Mm-hmm. So, lastly, I wanted to say that when I first learned about your restaurant a few years ago, I immediately thought of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and its innovative approach to desserts. I also thought of the book The Alchemist, which, besides sharing a similar name with your restaurant, has a beautiful scene where the main character sells mint tea in crystal cups to attract new customers. Both of these stories are on my list of favorites, so I'm curious, do you read or watch fantasy or sci fi? And if so, can you recall a description of a dish in a story that inspired you or sparked your imagination? And more generally, what are some of your favorite pieces of media that you would recommend to our listeners?
That's a good question.
Um, yeah, I do not read that much. I really want to do it, but the time has just been, and I think it's a bad excuse because you need to take time for things. So maybe I need to start doing that actually. But as a kid, I was very good at drawing, and I watched a lot of movies. So like Disney movies was a thing, fairy tales, like the scientific, sci-fi, all kind of nerd stuff as well, and that's been things that I'm still today very looking into. So it's all from Avatar to Harry Potter to Marvel to documentaries about space traveling to more classic. What can you say? Babette's Feast or like things. There's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like Wicked, like all of these worlds where imagination is used, and I think there's some amazing. Some amazing parallels to use. I use it a lot now it's a podcast, you will not see it, but behind me I'm sitting with all of these visuals which we're doing in our studio department. So sometimes I have a lot of references from movies and the latest from Doctor Strange in Marvel that was like we have used an effect that they used in that movie in one of our contents in Dome. So in that way, I'm still very much a kid on like how can it's inspired me as well, like to especially in movies in general, all sorts of it. I think one of the dishes we have done was actually from a fairy tale that I read by Hans Christian Andersen, which was about these rats, or not rats, mouses. Mouse that had a big feast, and the whole like back in the days when like that imagination of building up, it was nearly like reading Ratatouille in just it was right down like many years before that. But to imagine the king mouse and having the big feast, and the candle was made of cow's fat, and they ate from the candle, and all of these things. And we recreated that as a dish, and actually got Stephen Fry to speak the fairy tale from Hans Christian Andersen that we could show the guests. So yeah, I think that's been the latest that we have.
That's so interesting. And that brings us to the end of this amazing conversation with Mr. Munk. Mr. Munk, thank you very much for today's discussion.
Thank you so much.
For everyone listening, if you found this discussion insightful, make sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, keep looking up and thinking beyond.